Last night, stars may have canceled the start of Beyonce's concert at Soldier Field, but we're gonna come off and running and ready to go as you're listening to the Friday Funk edition of Second City Sports on Chicago. It is Crosstown Classic weekend up there at Wrigley Field. Do you care? Do you care? I do. Does LaKeena? We'll get into our thoughts coming up. The 2025 Chicago Bears schedule is out. I noticed a couple of things that I predicted on the show. One came true, and one that most people are not talking about. We'll get into that. Plus the Nationals Football League rest of the prime time schedule as well. In basketball, Steph Curry and the rest of the Golden State Warriors are home for the year, while one team kept the season alive, forcing a Game 7 on Sunday. In the Stanley Cup playoffs, one legend is going home, while the other team's favorite in the Western Conference is still on the fringe. And in the PGA Golf, LaKeena will have an update. Plus, we'll have our sports potpourri segment. That and all and more as a Friday Funk edition of Second City Sports starts right now. Welcome to another Friday Funk edition of Second City Sports. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in a living color right here on Sports Soul Chicago. Along with Miss LaKeena McGee, which is she. I ain't City Brown, you know it's me. You can follow your Shirley on Twitter, X, in the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You follow my Keenan McGee on the Twitter, execute again IG.
Be sure to download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast. We're located at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We're unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinion, do our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. You can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you. But you decide to troll indoor, do something silly, dumb, or stupid. I've given LaKeena full powers to give you Dumbos to be a Olympian boot.
Toodles.
But before we begin, shout out to the replay gang that's checking us out on the replay right now at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube pages. But most importantly, much love to the live game that's LIVE Entertainment Gang that's checking us out live right now at 12:21 p.m. Central Standard Time. Also on our Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube pages. Don't you ever forget our motto, whether we talk sports, music, or entertainment, minus politics. We will always provide.
We might use some of the best here on Second City Sports. Of course, we got the playoffs going on in both the NBA and the Stanley Cup playoffs. We had one upset in the NHL. We're gonna have one Game 7 in the NBA. We'll see tonight if one team can force another one. We'll talk about that too. And like I said, we had an upset in the NHL Cup, Stanley Cup, semifinals. So we'll get to that. And then, of course, the PGA Championship going on right now at Quail Hollow. We got some familiar names, not so familiar names, but there'll be some familiar names at the top so far. We'll see if Scotty Scheffler can make a move there down there in Charlotte. Of course, we also have sports media news as well. And, of course, we got the Crosstown Music Classic going on right now. They're about to start in a little bit. But first, Sid, it's not the only one either. Other crosstown inner city rivalries going on in baseball this weekend. But first, Sid, the release of the big news that came out on Wednesday, well, as it kind of went on throughout. Of course, we'll talk about the rest of the NFL schedule in just after 1:30. But we'll talk Bears first, as the Bears have probably one of, if not the toughest schedule in the NFL coming up this season, and their opener will be it will be against the Vikings on Monday Night Football, September 8th. And it's interesting because they got an early bye week, which would be week 5, and then they have
I don't like that.
No, I don't either. Yeah. Early buys are always the worst, no matter who you are. Like I said, we'll talk about that. And of course, they play Green Bay in weeks 14 and 15. They play Cleveland in between. I don't like that either. They didn't get as many primetime games. I know Sid was hoping for some like 5, maybe primetime games. They didn't get. They only got like 4. They do play Black Friday though, so that's so yeah. So I guess that's good. I know you were predicting that they were going to play on Christmas, but that ended up not happening. So Sid, what did you think? Because this is the schedule. We're not going to do the whole win-loss thing until April, but the schedule right now looks. Yeah. Well, in May, but the season starts later on in September. But the year has gone by quick. But you knew what I meant. But you know what I meant. I know that we're not making predictions now since we're in the middle of May. But take 2. But I don't like the schedule. The schedule. Look, they got to play the AFC North. They got to play the NFC East, including the reigning Super Bowl champs. They also have to play San Francisco again. And this schedule looks, I don't want to say murderer's row, but it looks hard.
First of all, selfishly speaking, they're not playing on my birthday this year. I believe that's where the bye week is, so I am a little ticked off about that, but that's just me. Second element that not too many people are talking about, before the month of November, the Bears only have 3 home games this season. Between now and the start of November, that's opening night against the Minnesota Vikings, 2 weeks later against the Dallas Cowboys, and that's a 3:25 game, America's Game of the Week with Tom Brady and Aaron Andrews on Fox, and of course October 19th versus the New Orleans Saints minus Derek Carr, who's now chilling in retirement. So the Bears do get a bye week in week 4. I know Ben Johnson mentioned, if you caught his interview the other day on Colin Cowherd's show, he said that he liked it. Do I believe him? Yes and no. Check out the interview for yourself and gain your own thoughts. But the Bears play a lot of road games, especially in the first half of the season. As you mentioned here, LaKeena, with the back-to-back road games at the end of October and beginning of November against at Baltimore, first on October 26th, and at Cincinnati on November 2nd. Both of them new games, by the way. That's going to be a tough task for the Chicago Bears. We said that the Bears will have a tough schedule this year, and it's looking that way. They have a slightly easy schedule in the beginning, but it's still going to be tough. But after that bye week, it's going to be murder's row. And of course, in the month of December, where they play the majority of their home games, it's going to be murder's row again. You playing, except I believe not minus the 49ers, you're playing all playoff teams from a year ago, minus the 49ers and minus the Cleveland Browns. So people think, well, they have a soft landing towards the end of the season. Yes and no. So the Bears are going to get it on the front end. They're definitely going to get it on the back end.
Yeah, and look, and San Francisco, you mentioned that. I mean, they actually, if you go by, the numbers and such, they actually have the easier schedule. Talk about San Francisco. We'll talk about that when we talk about the rest of the NFL schedule coming up later on in the bottom of the next hour. But yeah, I mean, look, you got Minnesota, of course, we talked about that. That's opener on Monday night in Minnesota, well, at home at Soldier. Then you got to go at Detroit. Then you got to go, you host Dallas. You got to go at Vegas. We'll see how Vegas looks. Then they got the bye on week 5. Then you got another Monday nighter against Washington. So that's that's going to be kind of interesting there. But and like you want to say that this then you got New Orleans, then you have Baltimore, Cincy, the Giants, Minnesota again. Then you got Pittsburgh. Then on Black Friday you got to play Philadelphia. Then you've got Green Bay. Then after that you got Cleveland, and then you have to play Green Bay again. This time at Soldier. Then of course you got San Francisco. We'll see where they are. That's because that's a Sunday nighter. And then you have the finishing up against Detroit. I'm a little surprised that one of those Detroit games did not get the national treatment, because I kind of feel like you got Ben Johnson faces former team, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would have thought that maybe they wanted to kind of carry on with that. They didn't. So, but even still, yeah, it kind of feels. I don't want to say that the schedule feels a little bit wonky, but yeah, it is a little bit, because, like I said, New Orleans, okay, because especially with Derek Carr retiring now. They don't know who their quarterback is right now. So, okay. The Bengals, we'll talk about the Raiders' situation after at the bottom of the next hour. But yeah, I mean, the schedule does not. Yeah, there's no cupcakes here for the Bears, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this team looks early on. If they can't go 2-2 at the very least, it's going to be a long season for that Bears squad. So you really have to set the tone in those first 4 games before the bye, especially as you have an early bye week this year.
You're listening to Second City Sports on Chicago. LaKeena here with you, breaking down the Chicago Bears schedule for the 2025 season. LaKeena, you talked about it getting off to a good start, and that's what kind of Ben Johnson was alluded to in his interview with Colin Cowherd the other day on his show. You're learning about your team. You want to set the tone, establish an identity. But he said this paraphrase. I'm talking about head coach Ben Johnson on Colin's show. You still with that bye week coming after week 4, you still got to learn some things about your team. You say he wants to be ahead of the curve a little bit, but you're still learning about your team. When you come back for the bye, this team should be off and running. Heaven forbid you don't have any major injuries. Hopefully Caleb Williams will be improving every week, and hopefully that the defense will be the opposite of what was last year. But I want to talk about this the murderous row stretch in the middle of November, LaKeena, if I may, real quick. You have the New York Giants here in Chicago on November 9th, but 3 games, I believe, in 12 days, if my math is correct. November 16th, you play at Minnesota. November 23rd, you host the Steelers here in Chicago. Probably Aaron Rodgers, but don't tell anybody. And then, of course, on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, 5 days later, you travel to Philadelphia to play the Eagles, which is going to be a tough game within itself. So, if the Bears can survive that stretch and still be at 500, I think they could be primed for a run towards the division title, hopefully. But and primed for running one of those wild card spots in the NFC, because you mentioned after that 3 games in 11 days, open up December, you go to Green Bay, and after that you have home games against Cleveland and Green Bay again on December 20th probably on a Saturday night, and then a week later with the extra day in between, you go to San Francisco for Monday Night Football for the last road game of the year, and then you come back home to face the Lions. So that you mentioned about the early part of the season, which will set the tone. I agree with you, but those 3 games in 11 days, culminating with that Black Friday game at Philadelphia, that's going to tell a lot about this Bears team as far as how the season is going to go.
I mean, that back end of that is going to be, like I said, we'll see where the Bears are. I mean, look, could they be, right there, competing for the division? Sure. But could they also be another one of those things where they could have no disappointing season? So, yeah, it's sort of one of those days where it's always tricky to kind of find out what's going to happen, because you never know what's going to happen until it does. So, look, get through that first half. Then after the bye, then you got Washington. We'll see where they are by that point. Then you got to go at Baltimore after the Saints game. Then you got to go at Cincinnati. That's not going to be an easy. The Giants, we'll see where they are by then. Then you've got got Minnesota. Now a lot of these games are on CBS. Some of these games, and for those of you who are wondering about that, well, Fox have first dibs, and of course they wanted more AFC games, so that's why you see some of the. There's no with the new TV deal, there's no conference assignment, so it's basically one of those things where you just got to pick and choose which games you want. So we'll see how the Bears sort of. Like I said, we'll have plenty of time to talk about the Bears, because they don't start training camp till July, and the season, of course, will start till September. But it's going to be interesting where the Bears will be. Like I said, if you can avoid major injury, especially after that, especially with the early bye, that's really going to be the thing here, because there's going to be a lot of wear and tear, especially having to play those 3 games in 12 days. There might be a lot of wear and tear there, so that's something that the Bears fans are not looking at.
Yeah. You want to place a friendly wager before the break? I got a couple here. You mentioned the New York Football Giants. They'll come to Soldier Field on November 9th against the Bears. Who you want to bet is going to start for the New York Giants, Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston?
Oh, brother. Well, is that by the 9th? Hell, it might be. Both
I'm not putting
be
Jackson starting just yet.
Well, look, both those guys might be gone by the time they start playing, especially the season. They don't have a good start to the season, so. I'll say the Russell Wilson, since it'll only be week 10, so I guess I'll say Russell Wilson.
Okay. And of course, December 14th, the Bears host the Browns. I think this is a pretty easy one for me. Shedeur Sanders will be starting that game in the cold.
Well, like I said, we'll see where the Browns are by then. I mean, they could be, kind of like in the, right in the middle of not the playoffs, but in the middle, like 500. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I'll say Flacco just because he did beat the Bears a couple of years ago when they last time they played. So
And Tyler Scott could not stay in bounds to score that potential game-winning touchdown. But that's old news. It's a brand new day, and we'll see what happens with our 2025 Chicago Bears coming up this season. Do you care about the Crosstown Showdown? It's taking place at Wrigley Field on the north side as we speak. At least the first game is a little bit over a half hour away. Do you care? Do you care? Do you care? And who has the edge for this weekend series as MLB presents to you and everybody else Rivalry Weekend? We'll discuss that and a whole lot more as you're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. Don't move a muscle.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I needed for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to the Friday Fun edition of Second City Sports. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow McGee on the Twitter, X, again, IG.
As we dive into the Cubs Sox preview, crosstown showdown for this weekend series, and preview the rest of the MLB rivalry weekend action here. If you have any questions regarding those topics as we get into baseball for this segment, you could go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions and comments to the comment section. LaKeena will get the upper screen for you.
All right, let's talk a little bit about that crosstown classic as part of rivalry weekend here in MLB. Of course, the Cubs and the White Sox, they're coming off good series. The White Sox got a nice 2-3 gamer, 2 out of 3 in Cincy against the Reds. While the Cubs, 1-2 out there against the Mars. They should have swept them, but again, I digress. But even still, you got a really solid, we'll talk about the pitching matchups in a second here, but, both these teams, you got to think, look, the Cubs are 25-19. They're in the division. White Sox have won 6 of their last 8. It's going to be kind of interesting. 14 games. Like I said, they're kind of in the fun, bad portion of the rebuild, I guess, if you're the White Sox. But it's kind of one of those things where it's going to be interesting because look, I know I've seen a lot of trash talking among both fans on social media. It's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, it should be an interesting matchup here, especially for the Cubs. I think. Especially with all the injuries and such, but you still got the Cardinals breathing down, your necks. We'll talk about them in a bit here, but this should be a really fun series. I know, so you said you're going to be going to Wrigley tomorrow for that Saturday slate. So what do you think about what will happen in this series?
It's going to be interesting to see if the White Sox play loser-free or they're going to get nervous because let's be honest here. Looking at it on paper, the Cubs should sweep the Sox. The Sox are terrible. They're fun bad. The Sox stink. They don't care. They're going through a rebuild. They'll just show up and they'll make the Cubs look better than what they are. Let me tell you something, okay? The White Sox, as you mentioned, they won 6 out of their last 8. They won, I believe, 3 consecutive series in the row. I believe their record's 500 since the start of May. And shout out to the Pope Leo. The Pope effect is real, folks, whether you like it or not. Facts are facts. Now with all that silliness out the way, the White Sox pitching minus Bryce Wilson yesterday has been phenomenal. And you saw that in their last series against Cincinnati since they when they took those first 2 games out of this series. Miguel Vargas is coming on with his bat. Edgar Carroll is starting to hit now. Chase Montroff has been a beautiful send up at the top of the line. I've been talking about that on the last couple of shows. So the White Sox they do have players, but we all know it's going to take time for them to get used to one another and grow within their unit. Tim Elko has been he's been struggling a little bit, but he has his first home run obviously out the way, courtesy of the Houston Astros last weekend. But you're starting to see the fundamentals and the tone being set by manager Will Venable, and their starting pitching. It had minus Wilson yesterday has really been underrated, very good. Now Shane Smith it's Shane Smith Day to those who celebrate. He's going to face off against the rookie Cade Horton. Now this will be Cade Horton's first start in the Cubs uniform. Of course, he came in relief and pitched 4 innings in last Saturday night's win over the New York Mets on the road. He was very impressive, but today is going to be interesting to see how many pitches that Craig Counsell will give Cade Horton. Will he give him 60 pitches, 75 pitches? I don't think he's going to go to 92, 95. I think that'll be too much for him. It depends on how the game goes. But will he be on a short leash, about 4 or 5 innings, or will he pitch him 3 to 4 innings? That's going to be key. And when he gets into trouble, going to the other side for the White Sox, will Venable play small ball and be aggressive, or let them sit back and see take what Cade Horton gives them at the plate? I think it's going to be a contrast of styles here for today's game. Now for the weekend, looking at the other matchups, Sean Burke will go for the Sox on Saturday tomorrow versus Matthew Boyd, I believe, and of course on Sunday, Jonathan Kennedy will take the bump for the White Sox. So even though the Cubs, as you mentioned, they have injuries to Ian Happ and Shota Imanaga, it stinks that both teams are not at full strength, especially for the Cubs. I still believe it's going to be a fun, entertaining series this weekend.
It'll be interesting, though, for the Cubs. I mean, look, everybody's been playing very well on the hitting side. Of course, Dansby Swanson's been hitting the ball very well. I think he has, like, the highest batting average in the last, 3 or 4 weeks. PCA is still hitting the ball very well. He had a great series against the Marlins. Moises Ballesteros, who, of course, he made his debut at the beginning of that series. You're going to see, I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot of him this weekend for the Cubs. So I think if you're the Cubs, I think you just want to kind of try to, again, again, a sweep would be nice if you're the Cubs. But yeah, if you just need 2 out of 3 against the White Sox, they're a very scrappy White Sox squad. I think you'll be okay. I think for the pitching, you got to set the tone there with the pitching wise. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of do it there with Horton. We'll see how he does today, and then you got Boyd tomorrow. So hopefully they can kind of get it going, and perhaps maybe keep the Sox at bay. Say you had a good series against the Marlins too. Hopefully you'll be seeing a lot of him. Don't be surprised if you see some of these. Maybe you might see like a 8-7, 9-8, one of those kinds of games. So at least one of these games in this series. So yeah, it should be a fun. You always throw the records out the window when these two face each other. So this is kind of, like I said, this is kind of a theme this weekend. We'll get to the rest of the matchups in a bit here, but it's going to be interesting how the Cubs and the Sox do, and kind of like this will be a measuring stick game. But anything less than 2 out of 3 against the Sox is going to be very disappointing for the Cubs.
Yeah, especially as I mentioned with the injuries that's happening with the Cubs right now. Minus Ian, minus Shota Imanaga. The Cubs still have a good enough team. They should take 2 out of 3 from the White Sox. But as you mentioned, I think maybe today's game, because it's going to be the warmest of the 3, of being above 85 degrees today. But hopefully, if you're a Sox fan, like yours truly, hopefully today's not the day that the White Sox will be giving up a whole lot of runs at Wrigley Field, because you have Shane Smith on the mound. But I think today's game or tomorrow's game should be one of those games that'll be high scoring. Like you said, I think one of those games is coming in this series. Hopefully, if you're the White Sox, you can bust out of it. Hopefully, for at least Robert Jr.'s sake, he can bust out of it as well. So for the White Sox, I'm looking for them to still play fundamentally sound baseball. Keep the starting pitching at above average. I want to see what they do with their bullpen. Maybe Cam Boozer is that guy at the end to close games. I hope so, because he's been doing a adequate job at that. As far as their offense, will they play hit and run, or will they do like they always done in the last 40 years that I've been on this planet Earth, wait for that 3-run home run? But hopefully the White Sox can play fundamentally sound baseball this weekend, steal bases, hit and run, put that pressure on that Cubs defense, and let's see if they can steal more than one game. Because will the White Sox be swept? No. Is it possible? Of course, anything's possible. But do I think the White Sox will get swept? No. But I think they'll win one game in this series. But can they get that second game? I think they can. Like we said, Shane Smith goes today. Sean Burke, who's been pitching magnificently in his last 3 or 4 starts, he goes tomorrow, Saturday. Of course, John DeCannon, who's picked it up in his last 2 starts, will go on Sunday.
Well, it's going to be in the 50s and 60s for 60s and 50s for the last couple of games of the series. So we'll see if they can kind of, maybe like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how those matchups play, different, contrasts in the weather. So that should be an issue there. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. Keep McGee Brown with you as we talk baseball, the rest of baseball. Minnesota, the hottest team in baseball, they've won 11 in a row, including sweeping Baltimore. Now, Carlos Correa and Byron Bucks had a nasty collision at the tail end of that series, and they're both in the last update. They're both in protocol, so hopefully they'll be back. They play Milwaukee this week, but they, especially Bucks, and they've been really solid lately. And also, too, but again, it's been their pitching that's been really good. And look, I think Minnesota, they're the first team to start under 500, but then now have turned around and have won 10, at least 10. Well, now they've won 11 in a row as we're recording this. So they've done it all, pitching and hitting, and they're really good, and they're kind of, like I said, do I think they're going to, they're 5 out in that AL Central, but I know Sid's not sold on them, but they've been looking really good, though.
No. Yeah, I know we're going to use, some people are going to use this as an argument. I'll mention it here respectfully, but you can't help but to play who's on your schedule. And Baltimore has had a disappointing start to the season. We talked about it 1,000 times. And you saw it in that series, no starting pitching. Their offense has been put in check over the last couple of weeks, and Minnesota has taken advantage of that. Now, talk to me at Memorial Day or in the middle of June. If the Twins are still playing like this, maybe there's something there too. But until then, I don't see it there. Detroit, they took care of business against Boston at home early this week. They started to find some power surges in their bats, in particular Ryan Green, and and Spencer Torkelson. I don't know if you caught that amazing catch by Rafaela of Boston the other night. That was one hell of a catch that you'll ever see. If for those of you that haven't seen, I believe it was from Tuesday's game. Whoever was the right fielder for Boston, so I forgot his name, but he brought the ball back from the stance over the yellow line, off the tip of his glove, tapped it to Rafaela, the center fielder for Boston, and Rafaela held on to the ball and made the catch. Just one of the amazing catches that you'll ever see.
Yeah, and it's been really probably one of the few highlights from that series for them. But look, I mean, like I said, Detroit's been looking really good, so we'll see what happens there in that for them. The rest of the Central, I mean, I know KC had a tough series. Cleveland did okay in their series, but I think, look, you're kind of like everyone's within like 5 games. Well, especially the White Sox are within 5 games. So it's still, we can't really just give Detroit the division just yet. But it should be interesting to see if what happens in that division. So, yeah, they'll start playing each other soon. And that's really going to be kind of like the thing where things will heat up and could be very going to get a little bit competitive in the AL Central, I should say.
Yeah. Staying in the American League, the Yankees took care of your Mariners, LaKeena. Winning 2 out of 3. I know they had a serious injury to one of their players in that opening game on Monday. As you mentioned about the Twins taking care of the Orioles. You mentioned Cleveland, they take care of Milwaukee at home earlier this week. Has some notes written down here. Oh, the Texas Rangers, they did what they had to do. They swept the Colorado Rockies to get back on track there. And the Toronto Blue Jays and the Tampa Bay Rays did battle in the north or the border there. I know Tampa Bay won the series finale yesterday, but we talked about Toronto being one of those teams that could challenge for a playoff spot. I know they signed Vlad Guerrero Jr. to that big contract at the beginning of the season, but we said that Toronto's consistency needs to start with their starting pitcher. Kevin Gausman, who started for the Blue Jays yesterday, really took a hit. But the whole team took a hit, losing 2 out of 3 to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that was a tough loss for them in that series, and yeah, I mean, that was probably Gossman's worst start this year. So that was not a good showing for there in that series. But like I said, they're still within striking distance of that East, and probably still within the wild card. Again, it's a little early to talk about wild card right now, but at least so far, look, you want to kind of stay within striking distance of the Yankees. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, the Houston Astros, they won their series against the Kansas City Royals. Take it 2 out of 3, including winning the series finale yesterday by the score of 4-3, and also. In staying in the American League West, we talked about Seattle earlier, losing 2 out of 3 at home to the New York Yankees. As we call them on this show, the Oakland Athletics of Sacramento. Yes, they lost 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers, but they were very competitive in those first 2 games of this series. Yes, the game yesterday got out of hand with the Dodgers winning 19-3, I believe that was. But Oakland could really play with the best of them. I'm not saying they're going to end at 500 at the end of the year. Me personally, I hope it happens. But Oakland has some good young talent. We talked about it over the last couple of years. Could we see a turnaround like we did back in late 2022 with the Baltimore Orioles? What they did the last couple of years following that. But could we see a tide of a turn here with Oakland, or are you still in wait and see mode with them?
Yeah, I think they'll be right up there. I don't think, like I said, I don't know if they're going to be up there with Seattle and Texas. I know Texas won 6 in a row for that for the AL West, but I think they could definitely make it interesting and make teams earn those wins. I think could they be perhaps be up for one of those wild card spots? I really think they could, but yeah, like you said, there's a lot of talent. We saw it, here. We saw it, against the White Sox a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, there's definitely talent in that Central California, as I call them, A. So yeah, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens the rest of the season for them.
All right, going to the National League West, we talked about the Dodgers taking 2 out of 3 from Oakland, as we call them on this show. This the San Diego Padres. Are you still a believer in them? They took 2 out of 3 from the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, and Anaheim looks like they're going back to what they were, even though they're more competitive this year. And the Arizona Diamondbacks, they took care of the San Francisco Giants this week. Their bats are really starting to come alive as well.
Yeah, they've looked really good. Corbin Carroll's been really solid for the Diamondbacks, and it looks like the Giants are starting to kind of, as we figured that they would, they're coming back to earth a bit. So we'll see what kind of happens the rest of the season. But yeah, I think you may have to say bye bye to the Giants there. But yeah, I mean the Padres, like I said, if they can do it consistently, so far so good. But talk to me again by this time next month, and when we get to like mid June, this is when everything starts to heat up, and we'll see who are the contenders and who are the pretenders.
All right, back to the NL East. The Mets take care of the New York Mets take care of the Pittsburgh Pirates. They did beat Paul Skeens head-to-head on Monday in the opening game of that series. I watched that game in its entirety. That Monday game again with Paul Skeens. The Mets did look very good. They win that series. The Atlanta Braves take 3 out of 4 for the Washington Nationals. Now they sit at 500. Are you starting to believe in the Atlanta Braves now?
Yeah, look, you play with it in the scheduling. So yeah, again, ask me this question again in a couple of weeks.
And of course, the Philadelphia Phillies, they split their doubleheader the other day with the St. Louis Cardinals. They still above 500 at 25-17. We talked about them earlier years struggling with their bullpen, but their bats are still coming alive with Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto. He hit a home run in that in the series finale the other day. So here we go again with the Phillies. They have the offense. They have the starting pitcher. Yes, we talked about Aaron Nola getting off to that personal on 5-star record rise. But do you see a tide turning here? Because their bats have been alive for the last couple of weeks.
They need the bullpen help though. I think that's really what they need. I think they're gonna have to trade for some bullpen arm during the trade deadline, because that's what killed them last season. So yeah, I think that's really look, they got the bats going, they're nice and deep, but yeah, the pitching, yeah, they really got to shore up their pitching though.
I want to go back to the AL West. We talked about Oakland, as we still call them on this show. Seattle, they still had to get back consistently. I want to talk Houston Astros. I know they're not the same team we've been watching over the last half a decade or so. I know they got your former prospect from the Cubs, Cam Smith, I know, and Isaac Paredes, and they traded with Hayden Wesneski last year. I know that their pitches kind of been up and down, but their offense has been sputtering as well. We saw it a week or so ago here in Chicago, losing 2 out of 3 to the White Sox. Of course, their road trip to end well, either losing that series at Milwaukee, but their offense has been kind of sputtery too. Do you think that it has to turn around at some point, doesn't it? Because still looking at their lineup up and down, and Christian Walker has been struggling. Jeremy Pena, the World Series MVP a couple of years ago, he's still there, but at some point that offense has to turn it around.
Yeah, somebody's got to turn a corner for Houston, and yeah, it's going to be, like I said, we saw that they looked like kind of like that Houston team from a few years ago before they started kind of clicking against the White Sox a couple of weekends ago, and that's really going to be the thing here for me. I think they really got to get the pitching, the pitching too, but yeah, the hitting especially, they got to get that going as well, because if not, Texas and Seattle, they're going to run away, in that division. It's going to be between those two teams in the AL West.
You listen to Second City Sports on Chicago City. LaKeena here with you as we talk Cubs, Sox, and the best and worst from Major League Baseball from this past week as we get you set for a rivalry weekend. Let's go over to the National League Central for just a moment. We talked about your Cubs taking 2 out of 3 from the Miami Marlins. James Taillon did look good in that start against the Miami Marlins on Wednesday, but he gave up all 3 runs with solo home runs, but the offense just got shut down. Milwaukee, they lose their series at Cleveland. Cincinnati, of course, they avoided being swept by the White Sox. St. Louis, as you mentioned, has been on a roll. And of course, Pittsburgh bringing up the rear in the NL Central. I know the Cardinals are there right now, but call me crazy, LaKeena. Even though this team, as we said, they're not going to do the same things as they did last year by winning the Central Division. I still believe that Milwaukee.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Milwaukee. They all look. I don't know. Look, they somehow won the division last year. I think I'm not. Look, I said, I'm not casting them aside just yet. Now, St. Louis. I mean, again, ask me in about a month if they're still going to be up there competing in that division. So yeah, I think. Look, I think the Cubs. The Cardinals only a game back right now as we're recording this. So I think for me, look, if you're yeah, I think you can't really rest your laurels. So that's why I say you got to try to win series. And if you're the Cubs, you want to try and sweep some of these series you got coming up with this quote unquote easy part of your schedule. So, yeah, I think things kind of kick into gear here. But yeah, I think St. Louis out of the two teams, I would say Milwaukee. But again, we'll see. I mean, St. Louis, they said they did the same thing last year. They kind of fell off, about right around mid June, late June. So, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens this year.
All right. Speaking of rivalry weekend in Major League Baseball, here's the schedule that sets up for not just today, but for the weekend. We mentioned about the Cubs and Sox. They'll get it going here in about 25 minutes from Wrigley Field. For those of you nationally, you can watch that game on MLB Network. For those of you locally, if you can have access, you can watch the Cubs broadcast on Marquee Sports Network. Others on CHSN. If you can have access to that damn antenna, I know LaKeena has dumped this, so have I. So if you have lucky enough to watch the CHSN broadcast live, good luck to you. Other matchups taking place this rivalry weekend: the Battle of Ohio, Cleveland at Cincinnati, Pittsburgh at Philadelphia, the Battle of Pennsylvania. The Mets and the Yankees will do battle the Subway Series. Juan Soto, he's going to get a lot of boosts tonight since this game will take place at New Yankee Stadium. The Beltway Series against the Baltimore Orioles against the Washington Nationals. Detroit and Toronto from Canada. Atlanta at Boston from Fenway Park. Tampa Bay and Miami Marlins, the Battle of Florida. St. Louis and Kansas City, the Battle of the Show Me State in Missouri. Houston and Texas will continue their 4-game weekend series. That's a rivalry in the same league, by the way. Tonight's second game can be seen on Apple TV Plus at 7:05. The Upper Midwest Series will have Minnesota and Milwaukee, Colorado at Arizona, Seattle at San Diego. The first game of that series will can be seen on Apple TV Plus at 8:40. The Los Angeles series the orange it's not the orange line, it's not Chicago Sid. It's the Battle of LA between the Angels and Dodgers that'll take place tonight from Dodger Stadium. And we have I hate to say it, the former series that was the Bay series. It's the Oakland Athletics of California versus the San Francisco Giants. This series will take place in San Francisco.
Oh yeah, the rematch of the 1989 World Series. So yeah, good go figure with
yes
with that one where the A's swept
series, not to laugh at that.
Yeah. The A's swept that series, World Series against the Giants, even with that earthquake. So they actually go show the clip of the of that before that. So it should be a fun series there. Now your national TV series tomorrow you got on FS1 you got the Washington and Baltimore. That'll be on FS1 game of the week. Your Fox games of the week here you got Atlanta and Boston. You got Minnesota and Milwaukee. I know most of us here in Chicago will get that matchup on Fox with our regional coverage. The Roku TV for Sunday. Note the start time at 12:05. We got finishing up that series between Houston and Texas. And your Sunday night baseball game of the week will be, of course, the Subway Series between the Mets and the Yankees. Hopefully, if you live in New Jersey, hoping to get to the series, you got to find other means of transportation because their transit workers are on strike. So, heck of a time for that to happen. But yeah,
I know, right? Definitely not good. Before we break for the top of the hour, guess who's starting pitchers for tonight's Braves Red Sox game?
I know that. Yes, former White Sox pitchers Chris Sale and Garrett Crochet. They actually posted. Someone posted on Twitter X this morning.
Go figure, right? Okay. Go figure.
I know, crazy, right? Yeah, they actually posted their old Sox uniform and their new respective jerseys. Now they didn't play with each other, so obviously, but yeah, that should be. It's still funny though, nonetheless. So that those two are facing each other tonight.
Oh boy. And that's your weekend in Major League Baseball for rivalry weekend for May 16th through the 18th this weekend. Hour number 1 comes to a close. Hour number 2 opens up following these messages. Steph Curry and the Warriors will stay at home for the rest of the year. We have one game set that will take place on Sunday. Could we have 2? ... We'll give you our predictions coming up. In the Stanley Cup playoffs, Alex Ovechkin and crew they'll be heading home courtesy of LaKeena's Carolina Hurricanes. And we'll get to some sports media news involving friends of the show. And we'll have the PGA Tour golf update also from Miss LaKeena McGee. That and a whole lot more. You stick and stay on the Friday funky edition of Second City Sports, live in living color, right here on Sports Soul Chicago.
No, I don't know though. I'm scared. I mean, you're so
Do you know that you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
And welcome back to Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. I'm LaKeena McGee. You can follow me about LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, execute us on the IG.
Oh. You can follow your Shirley Sidney Brown on the Twitter, X, and the IG at CK81. ID 80.
Well, once again, you follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, execute again, the IG. And of course, if you got comments and questions, of course, if we talk a little playoffs in both the NBA and Stanley Cup, you could comment on the Sports on Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channels.
All right, LaKeena, let's get into it. First, we'll start with the NBA playoffs. We have Celtics and Knicks Game 6. We'll preview that in just a moment, but I want to review with you last night's Game 6 in the Western Conference second round between the Denver Nuggets and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Of course, OKC led that series 3-2. The Nuggets came up big last night winning by 12, 119 to 107. Big games from Jamal Murray and Nikolai Jokic. And Michael Porter Jr. finally showed up in this series. He had a couple big shots on him. He had 10 points overall, but it was that bench. I'm talking about Denver's bench that was very impressive, and they got the big win to keep their season alive. We have a game 7 at OKC on Sunday afternoon.
Oh, goody. We get a game 7 back in OKC. Oh, lovely. But yeah, I mean, that game last night, I mean, it was, it was kind of all Nuggets for the most part. And they really, like you said, the bench stepped up for them. Michael Porter Jr. Nice to see you again, Michael Porter Jr. and PJ. I mean, look, it's been a while since we've seen you in these. Welcome to the 2025 NBA playoffs. But for me, I think, Sid, it's more like there wasn't a lot of contributions from the OKC. Yes, yeah. I mean, SGA did his thing. But, Chet Holmgren did what he could. But again, Jalen Williams, 3 for 16. 0 for 4 from 3-point range. You can't do that when you're trying to clinch a series. So I'm sorry, but yeah, look, I give Denver all the credit. They've had their issues, and such. Switching their coach near the end of the regular season, but a lot of their guys just didn't show up, and I think you can't do that. And look, you're going into game 7 against a very experienced playoff team. If you want to show people that you want to be a part of that group, you want to join that group of there are some people that are not sold on the Thunder. Your guys got to step up, and on tomorrow, that's really going to be the thing here. And you can't have Jalen Williams. You can't go 0 for 4 from 3-point range or 3 for 16 from the field. You can't do that. We got guys like Andrew Wiggins. They got to step up. Isaiah Joe, he has to step up too. So, SGA need, and Chet Holmgren, they can only do so much by themselves, and they really need to kind of get it going if they want to win this game 7 tomorrow.
We talk about it all the time in the playoffs. It's all about matchups and adjustments, and both teams have adjusted very well in this series. It was OKC getting blown off their home court in game 1. They come back in game 2. And Denver, they snatched a victory from the Jaws, defeated in game 3. Oklahoma City survives and wins game 4 in Denver. Of course, the other night, OKC wins game 5 in a close one at home. And then Denver played like their season was on the line, winning by 12 in game 6. Here's a couple statistics I want to point out that stood out to me last night for one of the reasons why the Denver Nuggets won. The discrepancy in free throw attempts, 32 to 16 for the Denver Nuggets. Denver was 27 to 32, while OKC was 10 to 16 from the line. Denver was more aggressive. OKC was not getting to the lane. And speaking of points in the paint, even though OKC had the advantage with the plus 4 52-48, Denver was the aggressor, in my opinion, drawing more fouls. We talked about rebounding being the key in this series. Denver was a plus 12 overall last night, 52-40, and plus 4 in the offensive rebounding category, 11-7. That's all I need to know about why Denver won last night.
Yeah, the more aggressiveness, they got to be more aggressive in the interior because look, Joker's going to do get his shots, but yeah, you gotta. I know Murray's not 100%. He soldier on through. Well, can he do it tomorrow? Because there's not a lot of rest between these games. So you got to wonder, OKC, the younger, more, fresher team. Then you've got Denver, who's a little bit more experienced, but a lot of those guys are, I don't want to say they're not old by any means, but if you look at, think about, playoff wise and, having games they got to play, I mean, Thunder's the fresher team, so if you want to get the edge there, I'll get the edge to the Thunder. But again, you gotta look. Jalen Williams, you gotta step up. All the other guys on the bench, they gotta step up. And I know if you're Coach D, you want to try to maybe perhaps set the tone early and not try to get behind. Especially that crowd down in OKC is going to be jumping, so I got to feed off that tomorrow.
Yep. As we mentioned, Game 7 of the OKC Denver series will take place in Oklahoma City this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on ABC. Let's go backwards, LaKeena, as we always do, to Wednesday night's action in a double dip. The Minnesota Timberwolves will go back to the Western Conference Finals for the second consecutive year. Not too many people expected that. They handled the Steph Curry list, Golden State Warriors 121-110. And, of course, the Boston Celtics kept their season alive. They beat the New York Knicks in Boston, and in the new Boston Garden, 127-102. We'll go with the Warriors Timberwolves game first. The Timberwolves got contributions from Dante DiVincenzo, Anthony Edwards, Nasri was huge as well. Rudy Gobert was a monster inside. Golden State Warriors, you could tell that Steph Curry was missed. Jimmy Butler didn't have a Jimmy Butler type game. Draymond Green wasn't himself. And Brandon Podziemski stepped up. Jonathan Kuminga stepped up on the bench. But outside those two, you really didn't get any more contributions from the rest of the squad. As I said, they really miss Steph Curry. Obviously, if he was healthy, this series would be totally different right now. We'll probably be previewing that series as far as the Game 7 is concerned. But reality said that Minnesota was the better team. They took advantage of Curry's injury, and they're going on to the Western Conference Finals, awaiting the winner of OKC Denver series.
Yeah, I think Minnesota, did what I think a lot of people thought they would do, especially taking advantage with no Steph, and they did just that. I know Anthony Edwards, there was a little bit of trouble, closing that game out. I mean, give the Warriors credit for not quitting. You give them props for that, but you can kind of tell that they were, even if they had won that game, they would have had a hard time winning the next two. So that would have been tough for them. But look, I mean, McDaniel stepped up. Gobert made some key shots. Randall was really good with 34. So it's going to be interesting to see what does kind of 25, I should say, Randall had. But it's going to be interesting to see, like you said. I mean, look, they'll be able to rest for a little bit. This is their second straight trip to the Western Conference Finals, so this will be their kind of like an old adage of it. So yeah, Michael Conley Jr. A lot of those guys, were there last year, so I think they're going to want to, I don't know if they have a preference, because I know that they did beat Denver last year to get to the conference finals. And I know that OKC, they gave them all they can handle through the regular season. So I don't think, if you ask Chris Fish, I don't think he has a preference, but I think they'll take the rest. I know Ant was a little bit banged up, so I think I'm sure they're glad that it's going 7. They get to kind of rest up a bit and heal up a bit. But it's gonna be interesting what Minnesota does. But yeah, and also as for the Warriors, I mean, yeah, you can tell that Steph, you wonder how long he can do this, play at a high level. You saw that the wear and tear will both, you saw what happened. He pulled his hamstring. I know Draymond's had his injury issues. So you kind of wonder, well, I don't want to say this is the end of the road for the Warriors in that group. Of course, Clay, down in Dallas now. But you kind of wonder, are we kind of seeing sort of the end of an era down there, over there in the Bay Area?
I think we kind of are, but I think this window has been kept open for an extra couple of years only because with their acquisition of Jimmy Butler at February's trade deadline. I know they gave him a 2-year extension, which kicks in starting next year. So that window is kept open for a couple more years. But Jimmy Butler, as I mentioned, struggled in their last game, struggled throughout their series. And let's give Minnesota some credit here, especially defensively. And we talked about them being a sneaky good defensive team as well. You mentioned about Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle coming through. But their rebounding as a team has been excellent as well. So you mentioned give Chris Finch, their head coach, credit for that as well.
They've had the best record since March 1st. So, yeah, they're definitely getting hot at the right time. So, Minnesota's going to be, whoever they play, they're going to be a tough out. They got, like I said, they were just there last year. I know for Julius Randle, this is going to be his first foray into the conference finals, but for the rest of those guys, it isn't. So we'll see what happens, whoever they end up playing. Now, going into one of the reasons why we're going to be talking about a Game 6 between the Celtics and the Knicks. Well, the Celtics, no Jason Tatum, of course, he got surgery for tearing his Achilles, but look, I mean, Luke Cornett had looked a little bit like Kevin McHale in that game.
Yes, a prototype. I'm just saying.
We'll leave that alone. 10 points. He was 3 for 5 from 5 for 5. He was perfect from the field. But Derek White had 34 points. The ageless wonder, Mr. Al Horford, kicked in with 12. And Drew Holiday had 14, and also Jaylen Brown had 26, I should say, as the Celtics forced Game 6. Now, this sort of the same situation that was happening here. I mean, the Knicks just couldn't get anything. Their defense kind of got to go in there, and the Celtics were hitting their threes. Now, if you're the Knicks, you got Game 6. This will be the first time in years. Now, the Celtics have won their last 6 on the road when they're facing elimination. So, if you're the Knicks, you want to try to set the tone early and try to get hot with the shooting wise. Because if you let guys on this, if you let guys like White and Brown and even Cornette, Porzingis actually looked okay. Again, didn't look great, but he looked okay, enough for them to win that game. But Porzingis gonna have to step up tonight for the Celtics. But if you're the Knicks, you definitely got to set the tone early, because if not, you might be playing a game 7, coming up early next week.
LaKeena, what was the one question that I asked on our last show on Monday? If you can remember.
I think it was who's going to step up after Brunson and Cat?
It was Josh Hart with 24 points, but I had a problem outside of Josh Hart. Jalen Brunson did his thing with 22 points, but Karl-Anthony Towns with the 19. What happened, bruh? What happened? What happened?
Didn't have a good second half. He didn't have a good second half.
Right.
Yeah.
And also too, I'll tell you what's been happening too with the New York Knicks. You notice in all their wins they have above 25 assists as a team.
Yep.
On Wednesday night they only had 17 assists as a team. Boston had 27 as a team. But LaKeena, the Knicks offense is all about Jalen Brunson dribbling. You give it to Karl-Anthony Towns on the block. Yeah, if he feels like posting up, he'll post up, but he'll take that outside jumper first. But that Knicks offense, when they look bad with playing the ISO ball, it looks terrible. And that's something that Coach Tom Thibodeau hopefully has been.
We've seen this movie. We've seen this before. We saw it before when he was in Chicago, Sid.
Over the last couple of days or so. So,
look, like I said, we've seen this movie before. Yeah, we saw it before in Chicago. We did. No, I said we saw this movie before in Chicago.
So
I mean, it was like
your Knicks got a couple.
Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting to see like what happens. Like I said, this game 6. I mean, Boss, like I said, if they can kind of get to kind of like set the tone going, hit their threes. If guys, like I said, if guys like Porzingis, steps up, Cornette, Pritchard, your guy, Braden Pritchard. I mean, if those guys can step up, I mean, look, we may be having a game 7, like I said, coming up. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, so sorry about that. I know we've had some some technical difficulties with the lagging and such. Got a lot of Wi-Fi in the wind here, but hopefully Sid will join us again. But yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be interesting what this game is, and this Knicks, like I said, set the tone early. I think that's going to be the key here. If you're the Celtics, you want to try to get guys like Pritchard and Cornette and Horford and Porzingis. They're gonna have to step up if they want to try to force a game 7. So Buddy Sid is back. So yeah, as I was saying, like I said, with the whole dribble stuff. I mean, like I said, we saw that multiple times here in Chicago, kids. Just saying. So. But yeah, I mean, kind of see the same thing here. But yeah, they're gonna have to change it up if they want to try to win this game tonight and clinch it. Because if the Celtics do win this and force a game 7, all bets are off, folks.
There's nothing that's more dangerous in this world than a wounded animal. And the Boston Celtics, with all due respect, they're a wounded animal right now. Yes, they are the defending world champions, but they play basically on emotion the other night, and they had their home crowd behind them, and that's one of the reasons why they won that game. Of course, on the flip side, Karl-Anthony Towns not being aggressive in that second half, that's another reason why the Celtics won as well. Of course, Boston, they were knocking down all their shots, but LaKeena, like you said, a strong start on both ends on the floor for the New York Knicks is a must tonight. Yes, you're going to have the MSG crowd rocking behind them, but the Knicks got to have to start knocking down some shots, being aggressive defensively, especially at the perimeter, because we all know that Boston Celtics take the most three-point shots in the league. They weren't making them the first 2 games. They made them in game 3, and they were making them the other night in game 5. So the Knicks had to pay attention to detail defensively, especially at the perimeter. Now, offensively, as I said, they needed a third guy to step up. It was Josh Hart, but Karl-Anthony Towns disappeared in that second half. It's got to be guys like McBride and OJ and Nobu, who didn't do anything. And maybe I missed something LaKeena the other night, but I didn't see much from OG and Nobu. So he's got to be that third guy for the Knicks tonight if they want to close out the Celtics. Because here's the thing, LaKeena. I know Jason Tatum's out. He's not coming back. But let's be real. The Boston Celtics, even though they don't like Jason Tatum being out right now, they're in the perfect position because this is the New York Knicks' last best chance, in my opinion, to close out the Boston Celtics. Because if New York doesn't get it done tonight, yes, you go to Game 7 in Boston, but you give the Celtics, without their superstar on the other side, confidence, maybe confidence that you don't think they deserve, whether you feel like it or not. They go in Game 7, figure, well, we did what we had to do to stay alive in Game 5. We took care of business in Game 6. Now that we have the momentum on our side, we can close these guys out in Game 7. And emotionally, over there on the Knicks locker room, they're going to be shot if they don't close this out tonight. So the Knicks, you got to treat this like a Game 7 tonight, because Boston, they're going to play free because the pressure is not on them. The pressure is on the Knicks because of your superstar being out. So if you're New York Knicks, as we said, set the tone early, play a full 48-minute game to get this done. Because if you don't, it's not guaranteed you're going to win a Game 7 on this coming Monday. And what you did, I'm talking about the New York Knicks, what you did the first 2 games in Boston, it won't matter.
Speaking of that game tonight, that'll be on ESPN at 7 o'clock. So that should be a fun one there at MSG. No games tomorrow night either, by the way. So no NBA tomorrow. So yeah, that's going to freak some people out there. Now, of course, the Game 7 between Denver and OKC. That'll be on Go ahead.
Okay, real quick, LaKeena. I know you mentioned about OKC and Denver. Game 7 on Sunday on ABC at 2:30 Chicago time. One Eastern Conference series that did end earlier this past Tuesday. The Indiana Pacers got by the Cleveland Cavaliers 114-105. The Pacers, for the second consecutive year, will go to the conference finals. Now, I famously said on our show back in February that the Pacers would not go back to the conference finals, but they could be a dangerous team come playoff time. Yes, they took advantage of the injuries of Darius Garland and, of course, Donovan Mitchell. He has some strong words post-game. We'll get to that in just a second. But Tyrese Halliburton, minus his dad on the court, has really shown up in this series. We talked about Brand, Miles Turner. The Pacers are really doing it as a collective unit. And they're shooting the ball very well, especially from 3 right now. And they really took the Cavs game and really threw it back in their faces, eliminating Cleveland in 5. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that Cleveland's season is a failure? I say no, only because of the injuries. Yes, I know they won 66 games, I believe it was, during the regular season, 64, I should say. But the injuries what got to Cleveland. Now, I said this was going to be a long series. If it wasn't for the injuries, I think Cleveland would have squeaked it out. But I think because of the injuries, I don't think that this season is a failure for Cleveland. You saw that before the injuries, they were playing a totally different style of basketball. Once the injuries occurred in this round, they went back to the old ways of last year, and you saw that it cost them.
I think you got to do it during playoff time. And I feel like this whole thing with the what happened to Cleveland. Now, yeah, you could say that, yeah, injury did play a role. But again, it's one of those things where you got to do it, during the playoffs. And they weren't able to do that. So I kind of feel like, I don't want to say it's a failure either. But again, at the same time, though, I kind of feel like this is sort of one of those things where you're just like, it was basically, I don't want to say it was a lost season for Cleveland. But again, they should have went far. Now, unfortunately, look, they had the worst time to have injuries, but Jared Allen, he did step up. Where was he during that series against Indiana? He was a no-show, and a couple of the other guys, So, yeah, it's definitely kind of like you feel like there's a little bit of a chance that, yeah, you say it's not a failure, but it wasn't a great season either. You can't use that either, so.
Now, you're listening to Second City Sports on Chicago, the Friday Funk edition of the program. Said that's LaKeena. LaKeena, before we close out this segment, let's dive into that. Let's do that hockey and give you the latest update in the Stanley Cup playoffs. we'll go to last night's action. Your Carolina Hurricanes are going back to the Eastern Conference Finals after eliminating the Washington now Capitals in our nation's capital 3-1 to close out their series of 5 games. While the Winnipeg Jets will keep their season alive, they beat the Dallas Stars in Game 5 of that series on home ice last night. Shut them out for nothing.
Yeah, that was Ovechkin. Yeah.
Thoughts first on Carolina closing out Washington.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I thought maybe it was gonna go 6 or 7. I think they kind of give the Hurricanes credit. I mean, they set the tone early in that series, and they kind of I don't want to say Ovi was a no-show, but excuse me, but yeah, he was definitely. You didn't really hear too much from him in that series. They really kind of shut him down. Give the defense of the Hurricanes credit for that. So yeah, that was a really impressive performance by Rob Brindamore and his guys. So really, like I said, really a great performance by them. So yeah, they're going back to the conference finals for a 10th time in their franchise history, and now the Capitals are kind of left wondering. And look, I don't want to say that Ov is going to retire, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, their supporting cast did not do well this series, and so give the Hurricanes credit for shutting them down.
Yeah, we talked about before on this program throughout the years. Carolina's a no-name team. They get in your grill. They play tough defensively. They play playoff style type hockey. Get into the corners. Get dirty in there, and usually put traffic in front of the net. They're very tough defensively too. So we talk about the little things all the time, especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs: blocking shots, clearing pucks out, not turning the puck over, really taking care of the puck. Carolina, it seems they do the little things right, the fundamentals right, and that's why they're moving on. I want to get your thoughts about the Winnipeg Jets staying alive. They beat the Dallas Stars, I mentioned, 4-0 last night to keep their series alive. Dallas leads that best of 7 series now, 3-2. Do you think Dallas will close it out on home ice tomorrow? I think so.
I think they will. I think they will too. I think they've been playing very well. Mikko Rademan had if he didn't have a good showing in that game, but I think he will have a big game to close that series out. And Winnipeg. Yeah, look, if they win, yeah, like I said, Game 7, all bets are off. So we just see what happens.
All right, the 2 games on Wednesday, the Edmonton Oilers eliminated the Vegas Golden Knights by beating them 1-0 in overtime. The Oilers take their series in 5 games. The Oilers will go back to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in a couple of years. The Florida Panthers will force the Game 6, which will take place tonight after beating the Toronto Maple Leafs on the road 6-1.
Yeah, I saw that game. That was just it was all Panthers. So we'll see. We'll see if they can close it out tonight.
Yeah, as you mentioned about tonight, Game 6 between the Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers will take place tonight in Florida at 7 o'clock on TNT and True TV. The Florida now leads that series 3-2. Leads that series 3-2. Will they close it out on home ice, or will Toronto force it Game 7? Tomorrow, Saturday, the Jets and Stars will be seen in prime time on ABC. That's at 7 o'clock p.m. Chicago time. That's Game 6. Dallas leads that series 3-2, as we mentioned earlier. And then on Sunday, we'll have Game 7, if necessary, between Toronto and Florida. They'll be seen on TNT and True TV. Game 7, if necessary.
And a note there, Rick Tocchet's going back to Philadelphia. He's been named a new head coach there. Of course, he had a lot of glory down there. He went to the Stanley Cup final a couple of times when he was in Philly, so it's a homecoming for him. Meanwhile, the Blackhawks, I don't know what Kyle Davidson's doing. No update on that front. So,
and the wheels just keep on turning. RP Tina Turner. I'll leave that alone. All right, but we're going to leave you alone for 2 minutes and 22 seconds. But when we return, LaKeena is going to have our PGA Championship golf update. We have some sports media news of all of our friends of the show, and we'll get into the rest of the NFL primetime schedule. That and a whole lot more as the Friday Fun edition of Second City Sports continues on Sports Zone Chicago following this timeout.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too. These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports on the hashtag Friday Fun Edition. You're live to load in real live in the living color right here on Sports So Chicago. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow McGee on the Twitter, X, and again, IG.
This is our sports potpourri segment. If you have any questions or comments for us during our last segment of the show for today and for the week, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you.
All right, so PGA Tour champion, PGA Championship update from Quail Hollow. She's outside Charlotte. Johnny Vegas, of course, he's a veteran golfer. He's been around a while. He's in the 18th hole right now, but he's had a monster front nine, a couple of birdies and an eagle. He is now 10 under, going to, like I said, he's in the last hole there. Max Homa is in third place. He's part of like a 4 or 5 way tie for third place, along with Luke Donald, of course, former Northwestern grad. Luke Donald, of course, current Ryder Cup captain, Luke Donald as well. Scotty Scheffler is right there. He's been kind of struggling those early on. And for those who wonder about Rory, well, Rory's gonna miss a cut. So unfortunately, it looks like that's not gonna he's not gonna have a good showing at the PGA Championship. But yeah, usually the PGA Championship, I'm seeing Rory right now, and like I said, he's just finishing up some stuff here. But yeah, the PGA Championship is always interesting because you get guys that I don't want to say obscure guys for the most part, but you get guys that you never really heard of. But yeah, that's kind of like how it usually works sometimes. But it should be a good tournament though. Weather, I know it rained a lot earlier this week, but yeah, it looks like weather won't be a factor the rest of the weekend, so we'll see. But yeah, might be interesting down there in Quail Hollow in Charlotte.
I was going to ask you real quick, who's some of those other golfers that we should be watching that's hanging around the top 5, top 10 on the leaderboard?
Like I said, Max Homa's been up there too. I know he's had a couple of top 10s in majors. Luke Don, like I said, he's been around a minute. He's about our age, so he's still doing his thing. So he might finally get a chance to perhaps maybe get that first major. I know he was close a couple of times at the Open as well as the Masters. Vegas is one of those very flamboyant guys who probably should have another couple majors. I know injuries have been an issue for him. So yeah, those are probably a couple of guys I probably would say look out for this weekend down there in Charlotte.
All right, we'll flip the script and go to some sports media news. And we'll start out locally, the Chicago Sky. And I've been begging this for a long time. They'll have 7 games only, but all 7 of those games will be at home, and they'll be broadcasted on 670 The Score, featuring all friends of the show. Miss Alyssa Bergamini, who's a Chicago Bulls broadcaster on that station, and she's still co-in-game host for the Chicago White Sox. She'll be doing pre-post-game and halftime. Your broadcasting team will include Miss Layla Rahimi and Miss Kyla Mills, hometown girl. Congratulations to all 3 of those lovely ladies. You'll get to hear them on 670 The Score, covering the Chicago Sky this summer. Only 7 games, including the opener. No, not the opener, but the game with the Indiana Fever on Saturday, June the 7th. Kyla Mills will be handling play-by-play. Layla Rahimi will do color. We'll do color.
May 22nd will be that first game against the Liberty, and yeah, I think this is a good move, for both the Score and for the Sky. I think especially since their game is going to be on CHSN. Still, most people can't get that. I know some of they're also going to be on WCIU as well, but I think I know you've been lobbying for them to be on the radio. So yeah, it's only 7 of the 30, 32 games, but again, this is a good start for them. But yeah, we got all three of our friends of the show we've had on the show before, in a couple cases multiple times. So look, good for Mitch Rosen to make this move. This is a very smart business move on his part.
Yes, and hopefully the Sky will do well this year. I know they had a lot of injuries last year. I know Teresa Weatherspoon obviously is not the head coach anymore. I know Carmelo Cardoso was injured most of last year. Angel Reese had a good year, and she got injured toward the end of last season. So the Sky have a lot of high expectations. I know they got Haley Van Lith, their first round draft pick out of TCU, formerly of LSU. TCU. I still think of her in the LSU uniform, but I think she's going to do great things for the Sky. So hopefully that team can stay healthy. You still have Courtney Vandersloot as well. So if that team can stay healthy, they can definitely go to the playoffs. Maybe it's just a wild prediction in my mind, but if they can stay healthy, I think they can have a great shot at going to the playoffs.
Yep. Yeah, they might. So yeah, like I said, we'll see what happens there on that front. Now, the rest of the NFL schedule, of course, we talked about the Bears earlier. Some of the games, well, let's take a look-see here. Week 1 games, I got it right here. Of course, the Bears will have the Monday Nighter against Minnesota at Soldier. And the opener, the kickoff will be on Thursday, September 4th. It will be the Eagles hosting the Cowboys. And I think a lot of people thought that maybe, I know some Bears fans were wondering, could perhaps maybe, the Bears would be that game, but unfortunately, yeah, I think we talked about it on Monday. Yeah, the Cowboys, like I said, they moved the needle whether we like it or not. So, but yeah, that's going to be the opener for the 4th on Thursday, September.
Yeah, and also too that the next day, I was gonna call them we call them the San Diego Chargers of Los Angeles. They'll be playing the game internationally, and that game will be produced by NBC Sports. But it will be seen around the world on YouTube and YouTube TV, so you don't have to search to watch the game illegally. So, so that Friday game, you can watch it for free on YouTube, produced by NBC Sports.
Yeah, they're gonna be playing Kansas City, and yeah, that's interesting. Like I say, you'll be produced on YouTube TV, also on YouTube. So, like you said, as long as you got the YouTube app on your phone or on your television or your computer, what have you, you'll be able to watch it. So, yeah, it's gonna be like
on
it's gonna
more
be
smart TVs on top of the option for YouTube, so it's pretty easy to find these days.
Yeah, exactly. So, for all you core cuts, so yeah, it'll be available everywhere. So this is a smart move by YouTube TV. Good for something sporting wise, but again, that I won't go into a tangent about that. But
I want to go back to what you said earlier about with the Fox and CBS. I know CBS is still the quote unquote home for the AFC games, and Fox is still the home of the quote unquote NFC games. But I don't know if you read this article yesterday. I read some of it and I had to put it down because I was getting fatigued. But Fox didn't want as many Dallas Cowboys games as they have had in their package through years past. And I know Tom Brady did a lot of them last year, at least at the beginning, because before Dak got hurt. And we know, like you said, the Cowboys moved the needle. And for football, you want to have your number one team during those Dallas Cowboys games. But Fox, for me, I get why they didn't want Dallas Cowboys games, because they want to be known as the Dallas Cowboys TV network. But at the same time, they moved the needle. They're always on at 325, whether it's Fox or CBS. They're always on Sunday Night Football. They're going to get love there. And they're on Monday Night Football a lot. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. So we all had to navigate through it and accept it for what it is.
I mean, the whole thing with the Cowboys, I don't it wasn't just the Cowboys. I think it was all NFC games. I think they wanted more AFC games, and they accommodated them this year with that. So, but yeah, I mean, look, Dallas, I know, Brady wasn't very happy having to do another Cowboys game, especially after they got hurt. So maybe that's another reason why they probably didn't want a lot of Cowboys games this year. They wanted more AFC games. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if the Cowboys, what the Cowboys do. I know Troy Aikman, of course, does Monday Night Football for ABC, ESPN. I know he said he has them win the Super Bowl. We'll see. They gotta get out of the division first. Look, they gotta get out of the division first. I mean, you got the Commanders and the Eagles, who are the Rays Super Bowl champions, by the way. They got something to say about that. So they gotta get out of that division first.
Yep. And let's like I said, I know you have the New York Giants bringing up the rear. They should be improving, but like I said, that division, at least the top half of it, is going to be tough. So we'll see what happens with that. Looking at some other sports media headlines here, if I can find it, I had some notes. MLB, ESPN have not talked since media rights opt-out deal. Why would you? Why would you?
I mean, not so. Yeah, I don't think are people surprised? I must say, are people surprised by that? I know some folks are actually surprised by that. I mean, they didn't, they didn't really want to, they didn't want to be dealing with that. I mean, look, if you look on Get Up right now, they're not talking about baseball that much. So that tells you something right there.
All right, and going back to the WNBA, the commissioner of the WNBA says they're expected to make another $60 million annually on the next round of TV deals.
Like I said, we'll see. I mean, look, they've already expanded. They're expanded to the Bay Area. They're going to be in Toronto. This is going to be one of those things where you hope that all this kind of comes to fruition. But again, we saw what happened when they tried to expand a few years ago. I think it's about 10, 12 years ago. That'll probably change with Caitlin Clark. I mean, God forbid she suffers a career-threatening injury, in the next couple of years. I could see them getting that money, but again, let's build this up one at a time here.
All right, and keeping with the television theme, MLS is offering Sunday Night Soccer free on Xfinity, and the Tampa Bay Lightning in the NHL. They'll be breaking up with Bally Sports / FanDuel Sports, and they'll be doing an exclusive direct-to-consumer service starting next year, and some of their games will be available also on over-the-air television.
Seems to be the move. It seems to be the trend here. So yeah, they're just the latest team to do it. So not surprised.
And the NBA as of right now, with the teams there are affiliated with FanDuel Sports Network, all of them will be coming back for next year. I believe that's 13, 14 NBA teams that have their games broadcasted on the network. They'll all be back next year.
Yep. So it should be interesting. Yeah, like I said, smart move, business decision. So yeah, I think people need options. So especially with the new TV deals kicking in, a lot of people are not gonna be able to watch those games on Amazon. So yeah, you better have another option for them.
Yep. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. Sid LaKeena here with you, finishing up our Friday Fun edition of the program. We still have some time left. And reading another sports media headline, ESPN's considering all sports afternoon show built around Peter Schrager. They really put him to work right away.
I know, right?
Well,
Yeah,
Round the Horn will be making this series finale next week.
Yeah, tough. Yeah, definitely gonna be the end of an era with that show, because that's been a stalwart for good lord, like almost 25 years or so, a little over 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
So now, as far as the Schrager thing, look, he was one of the top stars, in that Good Morning Football show, and so that was a big get that they were able to pluck him away from that. I know he wasn't very happy of the show moving to LA. But again, we'll see. It looks like that's gonna be the show that's gonna replace Around the Horn. So, yeah.
Yep. And speaking of NBC Sports, Michael Jordan reportedly will appear in tape segments for the NBA on NBC. Shocking.
Well, you already figured. We already figured that
on our last episode.
We said that already. I mean, look, you guys heard it here. You heard it here with us first. I know people I heard some guesses were like, "Oh, is he gonna do gambling stuff?" We'll leave that alone. Or other stuff too. Like, no, he's probably gonna do like whatever the hottest topics are gonna be for that particular time and blah blah blah. So it's gonna be taped again, duh. So you may see like once every month or so, once a month or something like that.
Yeah. And I don't think you'll be seeing hardcore journalistic questions from Mr. Jordan either. He's going to speak his mind, and whatever they tell him to do, he wants to do, he'll do it. Believe me. So they paid a lot of money for him to do stuff over there. So he's going to do it his way, and we'll see. By Major League Baseball, of course, now he's eligible for the Hall of Fame. Of course, shoeless Joe Jackson, the whole Black Sox scandal from 1919, throwing the World Series away. They're being reinstated as well. I want to get your thoughts on Pete Rose first, and then secondly, does this open up the doors for the rest of the players in the quote-unquote steroid era, like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and Kurt Schilling and those guys, to finally get their due and be placed in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I remember someone, I forgot who said it, but yeah, somebody said that they better. Well, look, if you're gonna let Pete Rose for gambling and Shoeless Joe Jackson for gambling, you better let let those other guys back, the Clemens, the Bonds, those guys. So yeah, you better let those guys in, just have a separate wing like we've been saying for years. So
here's the thing with Pete Rose. I know when he was alive that he had his couple of chances to come clean about what he did when he was the manager of the Cincinnati Reds back in the late 80s, before the late great Bart Giamatti passed away and booted him out of the game, banned him from the game. He was kind of dancing around it. I may have not have done it. I was around it, but I don't want to come clean about it. And of course, remember for years, especially back in the 90s, whenever Hall of Fame weekend took place, he was a few miles down the road doing his card shows, and people coming up to him signing their autographs and baseballs and things of that nature. He was making money off of his image during Hall of Fame weekend. So he was kind of a strange character to me in my mind, because I know what he did during analysis for baseball over a decade ago for Fox. And he was a guy, yes, he was Charlie Hustle on the field, but he was more of a sketchy guy off the field, in my opinion. I'm with you. If you're going to reinstate him and put him in the Hall of Fame, you should let some of those guys you had questionable characters in the Hall of Fame as well. We know that Pudge Rodriguez took the juice. He's in the Hall of Fame. We know that Ty Cobb was a racist and did some things that he should have been doing. He's in the Hall of Fame. So like you said, if they're going to let those guys in, let those other guys in, like Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Kurt Schilling, Roger Clemens, and others as well.
Yep, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, like, I think this is the first step, but yeah, let's see if everyone else, comes in and like I said, you gotta let those guys in too. So there are more than there are a lot of the various characters in that Baseball Hall of Fame. So yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, and MLB knew about what was going on with the steroid stuff. They can't say they didn't. So they needed those ratings, because after what happened with the strike and the canceled postseason, so they needed something to kind of get it going there. So you can't really, cast that aside and say, oh, it was morally wrong when a lot of y'all knew what was happening. So, and especially I'm talking about all you baseball writers as well that were writing during that time, but I won't mention their names, but
yeah. and steroids didn't get banned from baseball until the early 90s. And,
exactly.
Most of the people were using it. Of course, most of those players up until that time were taking illegal drugs as well. I'm talking about cocaine and things of that nature. We won't name any names, but you know who those guys are. So baseball wants to act like they're the moral police. Our game's been mostly clean throughout the history of it. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't, folks. But as we said, wrapping it up, if you're going to let those guys in, you should let the other guys in as well who had better numbers during that period of time as well. You're listening to Second City Sports on Chicago City. LaKeena here with you. All right, LaKeena, we still have some time remaining. Any leftover thoughts from any of the topics that we hit on during today's show?
The NFL schedule. I want to go back to the NFL schedule release for a little bit here because, well, yeah, as expected, of course, Minnesota will be playing, 2 back-to-back international games. They'll be playing in Dublin. They got to face Pittsburgh September 25th. That's going to be on NFL Network, also on NFL Plus. And that next Sunday, also on NFL Network, they got to play Cleveland in London at Tottenham at Hotspurs, their stadium. So, yeah, if you're Kevin O'Connell, I don't think you're happy about that because, you're basically gonna have to pack up for 2.5 weeks worth of stuff. Make sure if you got kids, make sure everybody's settled there, and so this isn't this is a bad schedule for Vikings in that stretch.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about it on our show on Monday. You gotta have your situation back home taken care of if you're gonna stay over there for 2 weeks. Because I don't think, unless it's a family emergency, heaven forbid, no one's going to be allowed to come home. So, I'm sure that was discussed before before the schedule was released. Will they get a chance to come back home, then fly back out? I don't know. It sounds to me that it's not going to happen. I know logistic things could change at the last minute, barring any family emergency. But outside of that, it looks like Vikings going to stay over for 2 weeks, and maybe they'll be used as a guinea pig to see if the NFL is going to start a league in Europe in the future. We'll see how the Minnesota Vikings handle this. So, what's the logistics? Obviously, you're going to get used to a new time change because there's a 6-hour difference between us and here at home in the Central Time Zone. And number 2, you got to adjust to the customs and the ways of that city. So, for those of you that travel internationally and known people that travel internationally, it takes you a day or two to get used to the time change and the culture and the ways of the people in the particular cities. And then when you come back home, you need a full day, perhaps 2 days to get adjusted. So hopefully, I'm sure the Vikings do have a bye week after that second game, but it's going to be a lot of adjusting on the fly, in my opinion, for the Vikings, and that could make or break their season.
Yeah, we'll see. I guess we made a good day. It's still early in the season, so maybe they can recover if they, I guess if you're Minnesota, you want to try to split, if not win both of those games. So we'll see what happens there. Of course, the first game in Spain, in Madrid, will be November 16th, will be Washington and the Dolphins. So that should be an interesting matchup. We'll see what happens at that point. Also, Indianapolis will be the home team against Atlanta November 9th. That's going to be in Berlin, the old Olympic Stadium in Berlin. The Thanksgiving Day games, you've got the Packers and the Lions on Fox. And you've got Chiefs, Cowboys. We talked about them earlier. And, of course, Bengals and Ravens. That Chiefs-Cowboys going to be on CBS. And the Bengals-Ravens game will be the Thanksgiving night game on NBC and Peacock. And your Christmas games on Netflix. Of course, it's all announced within that time span. You got Dallas and Washington at noon, Chicago time. Of course, you got Detroit and Minnesota. That's going to be at 3:30. So, we'll see what happens. I'm sure those teams are not going to be very happy. Of course, Dallas will be playing both holidays this year, so that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Dallas is used to playing on Thanksgiving, so that's not going to be a problem. But playing on the other holiday, that may be a problem. But I want to go to Kansas City. I think we talked about it on our last show. They played on Christmas at Pittsburgh last year. I know some players didn't like it. It's probably one of the reasons why it cost them that three-peat last year. They're going to play on Christmas again this year, and they're going to play on Thanksgiving this year against the Dallas. You said the Dallas Cowboys, correct? So that's going to set records right there just by the quarterback matchup alone. Assuming that both quarterbacks are held up, but in particular Dak Prescott. So Kansas City, as long as number 15 is playing for your team, you're going to be playing on a whole lot of holidays. So there's going to be some adjustments again with Andy Reid and the rest of that Kansas City staff. They're going to get the treatment like Tom Brady and crew got a decade and a half ago. You're going to be playing a lot of late afternoon games, a lot of primetime games as well. So it's going to be adjusted premiere again every year until Patrick Mahomes decides to hang it up.
And about half the games on the Monday Night Football schedule will be also on ABC. So I think, why don't they just put the whole freaking schedule on there? Put it back on ABC. Just saying.
Yeah. Yep. It makes sense. Now, any other thoughts on the Bears schedule or the rest of the NFL schedule? Because it looks like we're going to have some high-rated games this year, assuming that the superstars stay healthy.
Well, yeah, I think the teams, that's going to be an interesting. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like some of the games. Let me go to I got the Sunday Night Football schedule here. Let's see, week 2, but the battle between the Falcons and the Vikings, that should be interesting. And well, the first one for the Sunday night is going to be interesting too. You got Baltimore and Buffalo, so that's going to be interesting to see how that kind of plays out there. Another potential playoff preview. And week 17, it'll be the Bears and San Francisco, pending if it doesn't, get flexed. So,
Right. Because remember, both those teams were hurt last year. San Francisco in particular, and the Bears were terrible, and they got flexed out the game of the week. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. And one thing I will say about the NFL, and they've done this for the last decade, a decade and a half, at least since 2012. You have your divisional matchups in the last week of the season. We've seen some spectacular performances throughout the last week of the season in these division games. So I kind of like what the NFL's done here over the last decade plus, putting some of these divisional games at the end of the season to get more intrigue for people to watch it, especially with the playoffs and perhaps divisions on the line.
Yeah, I said by 18 we'll be interested to see what games will be there. So yeah, anything. What about you? Any other kind of standouts? So we got much to talk about it. So your early kind of like synopsis.
Like I said, recapping what I said about the Bears schedule. Only 3 home games at the start of the year. With their schedule is back-loaded with a bunch of home games in the month is December, of course, ending for the Chicago Bears. Challenge to have these guys ready.
All right. Anything else before we disperse?
I'm good. I'm ready for this. Enjoy this weather for this weekend, and for those of you that are going to that Beyonce concert this weekend at Soldier Field, hope you had a better experience than some folks did last night because of the weather. Yours truly will be hanging out in Wrigleyville on Saturday. Tomorrow, those watching live. And so it should be a good sports weekend, a good weekend in general around here because of the weather. I know it's going to be a little bit cooler on Sunday in the low 60s, but it still should be near 70 tomorrow, and I cannot wait to enjoy that weather.
With that said, you can follow me at LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X, and IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sidney Brown, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. Be sure to download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. Please subscribe to our podcast. We are located at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Be sure to catch Second City Sports live in living color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as the kids would say. Be sure to catch Second City Sports live in living color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
And if you want to catch replays of our show, Sean and Maya, the Smoke Fellas, and all the other great content right here on Sports on Chicago, you can catch it anytime, anywhere on Sports on Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channels.
And you know we will provide.
Enjoy the great sports this weekend, all the rivalry weekend games in baseball. Of course, we got a game 7. Will we have another one? On Monday we'll we preview one Monday. Talk about that too, both the NBA and NHL. Of course, WNBA, they're finishing up their preseason. Of course, the PGA Championship, soccer, they're finishing up their season, a whole lot more. So enjoy also the great weather, too. I know it's supposed to, the temps are supposed to crash, I guess, after tonight. So enjoy this weather while you can, folks. For Sid, I'm LaKeena with Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. We'll see you guys Monday.
Go Sox! Holla!